Welcome to Peak Dawn with Chris Hall, your host. And today I've got a wonderful guest, Dr. Ellen Cutler, on the line with me. Now, Dr. Cutler and I met at an event and she introduced herself to me as the Enzyme Empress, which I was very impressed by, excuse the pun. Look, today we're going to connect because Dr. Cutler has got a very multimodal approach to health. She's based out in California. And she kind of does a bit of everything ranging from organ-specific detoxification, including enzyme therapy and nutritional therapies. Plus, if that wasn't enough already, we're talking about energetic correction of blockage release, including nervous system and immune system, resetting practices. And she also is specializing in addressing the root cause of chronic conditions. So as you might expect, she's a speaker, she is a best-selling author, and she indeed has a practice. So Dr. Cutler, welcome to the podcast. I'm really honored to have you on today.
It's great to be, and your energy is wonderful. I love being with you. It's great.
Absolutely. Well, here we go. We'll connect the Australian and the Brit-Australian and the American cultural pieces together here, and we'll see what we can have a chat about. Now, I know you've got an interesting story in terms of your backstory in terms of how you got into the health and wellness arena, and I believe that was back in the was it back in the 70s when you had a then undiagnosed carbohydrate intolerance. Just for the benefit of our listeners here, can you tell us a little bit how you got into enzyme therapy in particular?
Yes, well, my story is a story that probably I hear every day in my practice. I've heard for years and years. I always, ever since I was a little girl, I always noticed I had trouble digesting foods. I would feel bloated and was very embarrassed because I wouldn't wear tight pants and nobody understood. And it was, it wasn't like an emergency thing, but it was disturbing and obviously something was wrong. So I was always interested in natural healing and using my hands, and I ended up going into chiropractic only because I wanted something more natural rather than going into the medical scene, although I did get my medical degree after all in the end later on. But so then I entered chiropractic school, and the stress, I had to go to school and I had to work to support myself. And during that, I got so stressed out, no sleeping and working so much. My digestive ills and my food sensitivities just became more severe. And I ended up being diagnosed with colitis. So I said, and I didn't know what to do and struggled. I literally, Chris, lived on one food. I just ate grapes, and that's the only thing I could eat. Wow. That's all I could eat. I couldn't eat anything else because I would have cramps, I'd have digestive problems. And not only that, when your gut isn't good, I always tell this to people, you can't feel great. You don't have the energy, you can't really exercise. You can't even be in a relationship. You just don't feel good. So the gut is such a secret, most important area to really look at and take care of. So then I went in, I did some postgraduate work, found somebody that said, Ellen, you are carbohydrate intolerant, which means that most population are carbohydrate intolerant. They don't digest foods, especially carbohydrates and sugars. And you always crave the food you don't digest, by the way. So if you crave a food, that's probably the one you're most sensitive to and the one you don't digest. So it kind of made sense to me. So he said, did you ever hear of a digestive enzyme? And at that time, Chris, it wasn't on the radar. Nobody heard of that. This is a long time ago. I'm a little older. And so I took a digestive enzyme that digests carbohydrates, digests everything, but it really focuses on carbohydrates. Well, within 2 weeks, all my symptoms were gone, literally. And I can eat a lot more foods. And that's how my story began. And then I began to say, you know what? I noticed my hair was better, my energy was better, my hormones were better, my skin was healthier. And I thought, in my practice, I'm going to give every single patient a digestive enzyme. I don't care what they came in for. They came in with a torticollis or they came in with a sprained knee, you're going to get a digestive enzyme. And I saw miracles, and I wrote a book called The Micro Miracles, Discover the Healing Power of Enzymes, because I believe if there's one supplement you take a digestive enzyme. literally the most important. And I still feel that. And that's, 40 plus years ago. So I'm probably the longest person on the planet taking digestive enzyme. And I'm a testimonial to it. And I have stories and patients that, honestly, when you start a digestive enzyme, it's one of those supplements you will always keep doing because you see the difference, rather than taking something that you don't know what the difference is. So I'm passionate about it, as you can see.
I would imagine. I mean, there's so many things that you can unpack in that, and it's fascinating. So I guess one of the questions I've got is, when, say, for example, if you do have a carbohydrate intolerance and you start taking enzymes, can you have your cake and eat it? Can you continue to eat carbohydrates, or are you advised not to? How does that work?
That's a great question. Yes, you can eat them and digest them better. Although when in my work, which we'll talk about a little later, I have a very unique, revolutionary technique that probably nobody does on the planet. And once you experience it, you are hooked, because it's pretty fantastic, actually. So everybody has a specific diet that works better for them. So if you're carbohydrate intolerant and you take your enzyme, yes, you can eat it, but maybe you don't want to do too much carbohydrate. You want to maybe moderate amount. So that's something that you can experience, and something that somebody who does my work can actually guide you and help you with that.
Well, exactly. And it's interesting because in our pharmacological Western culture, the short-term temptation is to go take a pill for it, and then I'll carry on doing the stuff that's bad for me, right?
Right.
And that goes with symptomatic treatment of medical conditions, dietary conditions, etc. So that's a really good point, because actually, and this segues into the multimodal aspect of things, doesn't it? Because if you, if you just did that, then it's kind of like saying, here you go, take a pill for this, but you shouldn't have a healthy life. You shouldn't exercise. Right. You shouldn't lose weight. You shouldn't,
Exactly.
all that. Of course you should, right? And so I think it's important culturally that we don't just take a pill and that's it. So, I mean, that is the good segue, of course, to the diet that when you say no one else is doing it. Are you
and you know what, Chris? Also, when you take an enzyme, honestly, what happens, and you see it in little kids, because they don't have the whole mindset. They don't have those beliefs. They're very pure. You crave the foods that you don't do well less. So you end up eating the foods that are better for you, crazy enough. That's why digestion is such a key ingredient in optimal health for every living person and animal that lives on this planet anyway. But truly, it makes a big difference. You say, gee, in fact, I had some people from out of town this morning who've been seeing me for years and years. And the kids, they don't crave that stuff anymore that they used to. And a lot of it, of course, is some of my other work that I do, but a lot of it is really taking that digestive enzyme. And honestly, you don't have to take it every time, although I won't eat without taking it. But even if you do it once a day, it will make a huge difference in your life. It's
fascinating. And on that thing about cravings, like I've done a few health challenges myself by a variety of, organizations. And one of them that I did was a classic 30-day challenge where you would strip out the 5 key things that were bad for you, whether it be alcohol, sugar, carbohydrates, and dairy, amongst other things. And through that process of basically detoxification for a 30-day process, I genuinely did not crave sugary things after, say, 2 weeks or something. And it is really interesting. And that can also link to parasitic infection, can't it? And stuff that's in your gut. Because literally you've got these little parasites, and it's these little things with teeth going, give me sugar, give me sugar. And then you're feeding these little buggers.
Absolutely.
They're literally thriving off that, and they're draining your energy. And that's one of the reasons you can feel like shit. So it's fascinating, isn't it? Because we've got these basically forms of either direct body addiction or stuff that's living inside of us. And that's the very reason. But yeah, I love the shift. Yeah. Now tell us about this unique stuff, because I believe you've actually, you've indeed developed your own carbohydrate intolerant diet, haven't you, that people can follow to kind of speak to you?
Well, my work, it's called ECM, by the way, and I teach and train healthcare practitioners. So if people are really interested in learning, please contact me. It's because I really want, because I have a totally full practice. I can't really take any, I can do some coaching here and there, but you know? So I want to get more practitioners all over the world doing my work, especially Australia. So, so I developed a technique. It's called Ellen Cutler method, ECM. And there's three parts to it. One of them is correcting your digestion, and including in that, you know, because some people are fat intolerant, some people are sugar starch, and some people are protein intolerant, some people are all of them. And there's certain characteristics, like people who crave salt, they're usually fat intolerant. People who people have a lot of GERD or you know, reflux or crave sugar, sometimes they're protein intolerant. So this is what you learn with this work. Yeah, it's fascinating. The food you crave is a reflection of what you're not breaking down and eating and digesting. The other part is helping your body detoxify, if necessary, very gently, but accurately and efficiently. The third part is really what stands out with my ECM method. I discovered that most chronic health, if not all chronic health issues, like something like asthma we talked about, there are sensitivities or things that you're reacting to that are the underlying cause of asthma. So for example, you have asthma and someone else has asthma, you might have very different reactivities or sensitivities than someone else has asthma. That's why it doesn't work to just give everybody one medication. It doesn't cure them. It doesn't really get to the root of it. What I do is get to the root of it. Now, a lot of those reactivities could be foods. It could be genetics. It could be toxicity. It could be relationships, emotions. It could be neurotransmitters. It could be chemicals or mold. You know, some people are really sensitive. It could be your bedroom is what's doing it, or who you're sleeping with. But so what I do, I have a very unique program and a machine, an instrument that programs my work and gets to the root of what is going on. And when you get to the root of it, I developed a way of actually correcting it, and people can even do it at home. And voila. Oh, I can wake up, I don't have asthma, I'm not coughing, I'm not wheezing, my acne cleared up, I don't have eczema, psoriasis cleared up, or autoimmune thing, fibromyalgia, and even long haulers. My whole new work has been clearing people who have long haul COVID symptoms, because a lot of the virus is still reacting. You're still reacting on many different levels, even just emotionally. That has to be cleared. This is unique, and this is revolutionary, and can help so many people. That's why I need to train more doctors or more healthcare practitioners to do what I do. So it's pretty, and I've devoted my life to this. I work all the time because I'm so passionate about helping people with chronic health, even depression. You know, but again, digestion is key, sometimes detoxification, but I call it clearing or desensitizing to these underlying reactivities. And some of them have been there ever since you were 3 years old, or ever since you were born, or even passed down, honestly.
Wow.
So I know there's a lot there, but it's amazing work. And I love it. I love working with people because I see miracles every day in my practice, really.
And I love the interconnectedness, the true application of holistic therapy, because when I was reading, you know, some of your work, and it was explaining how sometimes what can happen is that it's like things interrelate in both directions, and it can seem like a paradox. So what I mean by this is, let me explain something. From my understanding, and please, you'll give me the insight, I'm sure, if you have like a chronic condition of something, some kind of chronic condition, that can cause a depletion of certain enzymes. And so you can do enzyme replacement therapy to correct that. But then also equally with enzyme therapy combined with these other multimodal approaches that you're discussing, you can actually turn the tables the other way and address the underlying chronic issues. So it's like the snake with eating its own head. You can kind of tap into the infinity of the connection between chronic and symptom things, and you can actually address the underlying thing as well as, do you know what I mean? You can go to cause as well as symptoms. You can address.
Oh, that's beautiful. You said it beautifully. Beautifully, really. You know, and so, you know, when someone comes in, like, everybody is unique, you know, and sometimes it's just they're not digesting protein or food sensitivities. You know, that's one thing I always start with, Chris, from most patients, most people that come to see me or that I work with, is correcting food sensitivities, because literally the one thing you can control and the one thing that's so profound is what you put in your mouth. And because sometimes you can't control the environment, you know, you could be in a moldy, you know, you don't even smell it, you can't touch it. You can control what you put in your mouth. And if you're putting food in, like for example, somebody with asthma, many times they're sensitive to salt.
Fascinating.
It's a big thing. They're sensitive to corn. They're sensitive to sugar, you know, and sensitive to carbohydrates sometimes, just rice.
Wow.
That could be the underlying thing. Sometimes correcting that, just that alone, can change their life dramatically. They can put down some of their medications that they're taking. The other thing too is people are sensitive to the medications they're taking. That has to be fixed.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're chemicals.
Yep.
And you know what? Vitamins and supplements. That's why I like enzymes, because people usually aren't sensitive to enzymes. So I'm very particular, because people are taking all these vitamins. If you're sensitive to food, you're going to probably be sensitive to those enzymes, to those supplements as well. And they're not going to be working that well. In fact, they're going to be working against you rather than for you, you know. So that's pretty, you know, I know some people don't want to hear it, but some people come in with suitcases full of supplements, and they're not reacting well to them.
Yes, exactly. And then pharmacology wise, it's interesting because my wife has asthma, and it's a chronic form of asthma where she's had to go and, you know, see specialists, and it's kind of got to the more extreme level where they'd be like, okay, it's not just this, it's that puffer, it's this puffer, it's that combined with that and this. And it could, sometimes it was crazy. In the worst days, it would be up to 4 medications simultaneously. You know, and this is my intuition speaking, and I'm not giving medical advice. I ain't a doctor. But my intuition from an observational point of view is that sometimes when it comes to pharmacology, it seems like there's an irony to it. The more things you stack on top of each other, the more reactions and side effects that you're having. And it just becomes an absolute shit show.
Exactly. Yes, it's different. And it's sad, it's upsetting, especially see little kids that, you know, have to take all these medications. And I'm not telling people they don't take it, but there's another way of looking at it and supporting you. I'll give you a quick example. A person came to see me many years ago, and she had a mold exposure and caused severe lung damage, they said. And they wanted to remove part of her lung.
Wow.
And she said to the doctor, she said, you know what, I think I'm going to get another opinion. So she went to someone else that did some natural therapy that helped her a little bit. And then her boyfriend was a patient of mine and said, I want you to see Dr. Cutler. He called me up from Whole Foods and he said, can you please see my girlfriend? Can you please? I got her in, and she was so sensitive to mold. And of course there was some mold in her house that she was reacting to, plus different foods, got her on enzymes. To make a long story short, she is asthma-free, never uses any medication. We're talking maybe 10 years later. She didn't have to have her lung. And she now, when she goes to her doctors, her lungs are so healthy. Is that crazy? She could have lost part of her lung. I mean, how
mind-blowing. I love your passion, by the way.
You know, when you know you have something that you could offer people that works. Even if it doesn't cure something, like your wife has to use her once in a while, that's okay. But to know and to be able to learn how to recognize herself and even treat herself with my work is pretty incredible too. And I help people learn how to do that.
I love it. I love it. Exactly right. Because I think that pharmacology is sometimes necessary, and it can also be it's the crutch sometimes that we have. So we can't just like kick the crutch out from the stuff that people would seem to need in those times. But what we can do is take the parallel approach of nurturing, right? And my fundamental knowingness is that the body knows how to heal itself, and it's all about putting it in the right environment, because we're like plants. We need the right amount of sun and water, and all the environmental factors. And this is really what it is about, because enzymes are environmental, so to speak. You got to get them in your environment, right? Literally, and all, it's fascinating. So I think when you do that, you can start to eventually, it's not that you're then kicking out the crutch anymore of pharmacology. Sometimes you just go, oh, I don't need this anymore. You know,
exactly. That's right. And if I have it, I have it. You know, I'm like not down. I have a medical degree. I'm not down on medications. It's just that it just disturbs me that doctors don't really look at the underlying root of it. And you know, I've never met somebody with asthma didn't have emotional issues or sensitivities or reactivities. There's that always has to be corrected. Always. You know, I always say that when people come and sit with me, or even Zoom, because I do things indirectly too with people online, it's their hologram. Everything that's ever happened in their life is right there. So sometimes I'll find some trauma or something that comes up that maybe happened when they were a child, but they're still reacting to it, still on some level. That's why when I clear or desensitize, I desensitize on the nervous system through meridians, through different organs, so that it's totally, completely cleared and doesn't come back. Yes. Which is really a big deal. You know, so these things, when you clear this food, like you can clear a sensitivity to a food, or it won't come back unless you stop taking your enzyme. Because if you don't digest your food, foods can come back.
Oh, and the interconnectedness, right? Because I mean, yeah. Let's talk about. Let me ask a couple of quick ones, high level. Do you have any perspective of how many people if you look at the broader population, right? How many people have unbalanced enzyme issues broadly? Do we have any data on that, or any kind of insights in your experience? Because I don't know if that thing's even studied. You know what I mean? Like at a population level, but maybe you've got like some perspective from the volume of people that you see in your practice. Like, would you say there's an average percentage of, you know, unbalanced enzymes?
Honestly, it might sound weird. I've never seen anyone that doesn't have an enzyme deficiency. You know, because we talk about vitamin deficiencies, nobody talks about enzyme deficiencies. So if you eat a mostly raw diet, which is what I do, I'm a total raw vegan, and I do recommend a more plant-based diet. And because we could have a whole podcast just on foods, just that, because I've done a lot of study and testing people. But if you don't chew your food really well, and you eat in a very relaxed, healthy, non-stressful environment every time, like basically if you live in a cave and nobody around, you're probably okay. But we don't know many people with that. So every single person I've done this, I've been in practice for 40 plus years, every single person has some digestive imbalance or digestive, but it might not show up as gut problems. Again, it could show up as chronic fatigue. It could show up as maybe their hair is falling out, okay? Or they have an endocrine imbalance, you know, or they're going through menopause symptoms they shouldn't. A big thing is inflammatory reactions, like, you know, inflammatory arthritis, or exercise, you feel pain or stiffness after exercise. A lot of that is enzyme deficiency, or sensitivity to certain foods too as well. But so everybody needs a digestive enzyme, I believe.
It's fascinating. And it's like, I always say in my mind, I see dominoes, right? So sometimes you've got the underlying reason, and that can manifest in a chronic condition that can lead to enzyme deficiencies. And then we need to go to the holistic, you know, perspective of how do you get to the root cause of fixing that. But like, just to give one example, this was me doing a bit of research, Fabry disease. So Fabry disease is one example, and that can actually cause the symptoms, which are very serious, of either kidney failure or heart disease. So like when you go to a classic doctor about that, they'll go, you've got heart disease, you've got kidney failure. But it doesn't, you know, please correct me if I'm wrong. Are there sometimes like missing diagnoses here in terms of, you know, even going to Fabry disease, or, you know, the underlying reasons? Is that sometimes getting missed, and which is getting diagnosis at that symptomatic level?
Yeah. Well, you know, the same thing, just taking something like hypertension.
Yeah.
You know, people with high blood pressure, right? You know, most doctors will say you need to go on medication, you know. Maybe they do, but what are the underlying, why do I have high blood pressure? You know, oh, well, it runs in your family. That's not true. You know, high blood pressure is fascinating. I've never, ever failed with anyone correcting their hypertension. Now, that's pretty incredible.
That's awesome.
And again, it's different for everyone. but oftentimes it's what you put in your mouth, and you're not digesting your foods. But a lot of food sensitivities, or it could be sensitivities to a certain environmental or some toxicity, but or what you're eating, and just changing the diet. You know, it's so critical to, and one thing I've noticed too, Chris, maybe you've seen this too, since the pandemic, I think a lot of people are more open to discovering other ways to help themselves, other holistic health techniques. I've noticed it too. I've been bombarded by people because I think we've seen some of the thing that's hard about COVID, is like, do we ever hear of anybody talking about how to treat it?
No, you don't. And you don't hear about preventative therapies either. So like, in mainstream, there was never a conversation around the things that have now become proven, whether it be zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C, all of these, supplementation remedies, or indeed diet things that you can do, including exercise and, guess what? Getting outside. So I know this might sound controversial, but, if a government tells you to isolate and lock and be inside, that's one thing, but you're not getting the sunlight that you need. You're not getting the fresh air that you need. You're not moving your body and going for a gentle walk or whatever, to clear things out. All of that stuff. Like if you're lying down in your bed and you're wrecked, or staying inside for 7 days, like that's doing bad things for your lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system needs to clean stuff out, all of that. So I get that there's, it's controversial saying, because people go like, oh no, but that will cause spreading. But actually, we're telling people to do the things that could heal them, right?
Absolutely. And what my Micro Miracles, I'm redoing the book and updating it and getting it republished. And what my new chapter is going to be post-pandemic enzyme therapy, what you can do post-pandemic, because there'll be others.
I think you're bang on with that. I think that's really interesting. Yeah,
I think we need to be prepared. Do you know that protease enzyme, which I think I mentioned, we talked about a little bit. Protease is an incredible, and protease digests protein. That's one thing. But when you take protease in between meals, it kills bacteria, it kills allergens, it kills viruses, it helps kill viruses, it kills tumor cells. So I recommend everybody take protease. It's such an important enzyme. Just that alone is going to definitely be in this chapter. I have a whole chapter on it anyway in this book, because there's a chapter on cancer, and prevention and other things you can do. Even if you're doing your standard medical therapy for cancer, you can utilize the enzymes, because enzymes are clean. They don't compete or conflict with any other medication, which is also really good. So you can take your digestive enzyme, and protease is such an important, critical supplement for people to take. So that's really, really important. And I want to make sure people know about that. So that's one thing I want to
I think that's wonderful.
reiterate.
You're absolutely right. And I've read, I can't remember the full list of conditions, but I've read on the whole COVID and post-COVID thing. I've read stuff around, I think meningitis might have been one of them, but I think herpes simple complex and all that stuff, whether it be cold sores, genital herpes, all these kind of variety of conditions. Like I read this article that said it had a list quite long, things such as that, when it was saying that they're doing studies now where they're going, if you've had COVID, these things can start manifesting in your body for a variety of reasons. They don't quite know why, whether it be, underlying psychological stress, immunological, weakening,
exactly,
whatever reasons, it's all happening.
Yeah, Epstein-Barr. And I've been finding this, because I've been reading about it too. I've been finding this even last year. I knew, because in my testing, these are the things that come up. And I help clear it and help people work with that too. Absolutely. And interesting too, is that the one thing that, and I mentioned a little bit, is that people have COVID, even though they test negative, they could still be reacting to the virus, even dead fragments of the virus. That's the secret. That's what I do. This is a secret. It makes such a big difference. So until people are totally cleared on all levels of that virus or fragments of it, they can still experience symptoms. And they wonder why they're tired, they can't get out of bed, they can't exercise, or they, heart arrhythmias I've seen, vascular stuff too, skin problems, and headaches is another big one, and different GI problems too as well. So enzymes will help that too, but people need to learn this technique and learn how to fix themselves. That's what my kids always said, Mom, fix me, you know?
Yeah, totally. And as we're speaking about COVID specific things, I suppose there's three key categories that emerge in my mind. You've got the things we've just talked about in terms of other symptomatic things during essentially your body's attempt to recover, but it's not recovered yet. And this is why other things are manifesting. So that's category one. Yes. Category two, we're starting to allude to, could be specific things about COVID, where we were talking about spike proteins, and that's like a category in itself. I'm not any expertise in that, but I suspect that that's a whole thing in itself, because that's meant to be in COVID and also meant to be in the vaccine. So there's a commonality there. But there is the third category that I think needs to be spoken about in a cultural conversation as well as a medical one, which are adverse reactions, right? So I've got friends and family in my life that have got formal adverse reactions, some being as severe as pericarditis. So it's not just about individual heart arrhythmias and all that, which is very serious in itself. It's about ongoing conditions that look like they could be chronic. Like some of these people have had this going on for approaching 6 months, and it's uncharted territory. You know, things like pericarditis is meant to go away usually after 3 months. But literally I'm seeing this in life and connections and community. It's not just me reading something online and believing it. For example, in Australia, if you take all adverse events, so it's everything, some are less serious, some are more serious, but they're still adverse events. There's more than 100,000 people that have had adverse reactions. Do you know that in Australia, there's been less than 3,000 deaths to COVID in the whole pandemic? Yeah. So, I won't go there too much as to like, I want to get too down rabbit hole or agendas and why that is and all that stuff. Like that's a bigger conversation that might be out of the remit of this, but here's my question to you. Like, do you have any perspectives on for this third category of adverse reactions to vaccination and what can be done about it?
Well, what I do is I have a way of desensitizing with my ECM work to the actual adjuvants in the vaccination. So I'm not saying people should get it, or everybody has their choice of what to do, but I have a way of assessing what your body's reacting to. So helping clear and desensitize to those, I've been doing this for years with all kinds of vaccines. I have no patients have had problems with the vaccine long-term. Sometimes short-term, it comes up and I have to desensitize them again here and there, but it's breakthrough clearing. It's breakthrough how that does that, because they're chemicals, they're adjuvants, things that you would not put in your body normally, especially when you eat so well and you live a pretty healthy life, some of this, and if you choose to get vaccinated, which I did, I'm around a lot of people, I felt I should, but I desensitized myself, I desensitized my husband and my family, my children to the what's in it. And there's about 6 or 7 different adjuvants in all the different vaccines. Right. So that's key. And then there's certain things you can do afterwards when you get vaccinated that will help also reduce it. But a lot of things too, Chris, with even getting COVID vaccine, a lot of people have some underlying things that they never knew about that can be recognized even earlier. Some of these things could have been there before, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So Epstein-Barr or some other virus or bacteria that could have added to something like pericarditis or autoimmune, because pericarditis could be autoimmune. So, it's a bigger story than what we think. And it's complicated. It's very individualized as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And look, again, I'm trying not to go political on this, but I want to be very clear that I support everyone's right to choose what they do or do not do, but I don't agree with people being forced to. That's just I'll just say it straight. But again, to go back to the medical aspect of it, I think it's really exciting to hear that practitioners like yourself are actually looking at the arena of adverse reactions and how holistic health can be used to address it, because either way, regardless of one's personal choice, as a society, this is something that's now becoming real that we need to deal with.
Exactly.
So I mentioned the 100,000 in Australia. I believe from the VAERS register in the States, it's more than a million. More than a million, right? So I know, like, even 3 months ago when I looked at what were the stats for pericarditis and myocarditis as an adverse event in the States, it was more than 17,000. So anyway, so again, not everyone has this. I get that, but it's an issue. It's an issue that society needs to deal with. So I'm excited to hear about the fact that you're addressing those types of things.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of clinics working with that. But they don't do what I do. Giving people supplements is fine, but there's other ways that you can fix some of these things or clear it, support them in other ways, looking at all, because there's got to be emotional reactivities relative to some of this. It's been an incredibly emotional time. So we can't forget that emotional. And in my work, you can desensitize on emotional situations as well. So, and of course, looking at diet and looking at all, and again, enzymes are clearly helpful and supportive for these people too, as well.
And I believe you do go, very much additional modalities, right? So, I mean, let me segue into, I read on your bio that, was it Polarity Therapy? Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I did that. That's what I did when I first started Polarity Therapy, even before I became a chiropractor.
Yes.
So I've done a lot. I've researched, I used to do some homeopathy, and of course I did chiropractic, but now I pretty much do my ECM work.
Okay.
Again, which is, again, it opens up to all kinds of other aspects of health that sometimes need to be included. For example, tapping, EFT tapping.
Yeah, emotional freedom technique for those of people that don't know.
I just recommended it to someone. So I love that, and I'm so supportive of what Tony Robbins, his work. I've been studying him for years and years and years, and reading, and meditation and mindfulness, and recommending books. And so that's a big part, and exercise is a huge part of too. So I'm totally holistic, and again, diet is very, very important, and extremely important. You can't just eat crap and feel good. I don't care.
That's it.
And you can't just eat all good food and you're not digested and feel good. That's why digestion is so critical.
Absolutely. We mentioned EFT, emotional freedom technique, polarity therapy, for those that don't know, is like a form of energetic healing. It's this idea of chi and moving the blood,
right, exactly,
etc. And I'm again very open to that kind of stuff. Like I did my my Reiki Master Level 1 training just for out of fascination. And I tell you what, my wife's got a gift there. She's able to do it. She practiced on me, her mother, friends.
Wow.
And like her hands heat up. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So I love all of this stuff. Let me just call it energetic healing for want of simplicity. Is energetic forms of healing part of what you do within your ECM method?
Definitely. It's the healing part of it is energetic, and some of the evaluation, the diagnostic aspect of it as well too is, and what I also test and what I find is what's subconscious. Many of what I find is not conscious, but this subconscious is what causes ill health. It's all this subconscious, So a lot of what I do is energetically able to open up and able to see through my program what is subconscious. And it is totally an energetic technique to where I can work on you there indirectly and you will get results. And
that's fascinating, right? Remote stuff's fascinating. Yeah.
And I did my medical training. So, years ago, I wouldn't tell you this. I think I wouldn't even, but I can't believe how it works. I mean, I have people from all over the world and I work on them and they say, oh, now I can eat tomatoes and it's okay. It's remarkable how it works.
It is.
Because it doesn't matter. It's energy. You could be sitting here. It can be Zoom. So I've been doing Zoom way before the pandemic and having amazing results. So I do it. And that's why I want to teach more doctors how to do this so they can reach out to as many people as we can.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned meridian healing. There's also, the kind of the chakral stuff. Like I used to have a coach that coached me. She was a business coach, and she was also a spiritual healer. And she'd get me to do meditations, and she'd do these breathing exercises, and bringing in the light through the crown chakra and all that stuff. And again, totally open to all that. And then she'd kind of get me to pass that energy down through my meditation, through different chakras, and she'd notice where they're blocked, and she'd go, "Oh yeah, it's rusty there. Do this, do that, do this, do that." And all I can say is that this starts to go, in my opinion, to the realm of, the spiritual aspect of things.
Exactly.
And what I'd like to say about spirituality is that I used to be a cynic of this stuff. But then when I finally experienced it for myself, like, for example, even had a blessing for the first time, and it was like, and I went to an event once. It was called a satsang, right? And a satsang is like a form of, gathering.
Yeah.
I did that a couple of times. I didn't carry on doing, but I did it to experience it. And I had a blessing once, and I sat down and had a blessing by someone that's a spiritual guide, and they literally put their thumb on my forehead. And the only words I can describe it as were, I felt like I was at the altar of God. That's
wow.
it.
I could just, when you're talking about it, I could feel that energy right now pass through. You're talking about it.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
It is remarkable. And that's an experience, right? So all I guess I'm trying to encourage people to do that even if you're hearing some of these things now and go, "Oh, that's bullshit." Well, it's about two things. It's about having a great practitioner, and it's about, secondly, you experiencing it, because once you've experienced it, then I think that's how the belief kicks in for those, for that stuff when it's new to people.
And it's fascinating too. Some of the people that are most skeptical sometimes become the most, they have the more miracles than anyone. So it has nothing to do with your mind. It's really, we are is equally a physical body, we're an energetic body. I mean, you can feel it. When you're with somebody, you can feel that energy, or feel weird energy, but it's energy. We're energetic beings for sure. And if people have ever felt like they're in the zone, like when they're exercising, that zone, you're out of your head, you're pure energy, pure spirit, pure power, like you could fly, and that's how I feel. That's how I feel when I work on people. I'm here all day. I feel like I'm totally in another zone. It's my environment. It was a gift to me to be given. And I truly grateful for it and experience it, because it's taught me about spirituality, really. And what true healing is when people, when they're happy and they're feel joy, and that means the most to me, so that's definitely part of what I do as well.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, brilliant. It gives me goosebumps. It really does. I love talking about the connecting.
Yeah, me too. I can feel it. It's great.
Yeah, that's cool. Now I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you. In terms of how you got this speciality, of course, in identifying chronic conditions, right? And how you can address these things. When it comes to, let's say, enzyme therapy in particular, if you were a layperson and you didn't know about this stuff, and maybe some people this is new to them today, what, from a layperson's perspective, would be some of the most left field, surprising, "Are you kidding me? No way there's a link," to enzyme therapy in terms of chronic conditions that they might know of?
Oh yeah. Well, there are so many conditions that can be helped with it. Just brain fog. Who would think that taking an enzyme would help with brain fog? How many people? That's another COVID long haul. It's brain fog, or memory, or my nails. A lot of men and women talk about their nails cracking or coming off, or their skin, or acne. These are incredible results. The other thing is weight loss. Oh, I took this, I started taking this enzyme, I don't eat as much, and my weight is coming off for the first time. I'm not swollen, I'm not retaining water. So it's like every organ, it benefits from digesting your food, because again, it's all about optimal digestion is all about absorbing and utilizing the nutrients from foods. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, we eat these good foods, but if you're not utilizing them, you're not going to benefit from what they're supposed to give to you. So that's where, so enzyme therapy, so it can be incredible, or fungus can go away or something like that. Or my eyesight improved. That's a big one.
Really?
Eyesight, that's another, eyesight improved. Yes.
Go on, tell me about that. Tell me some insights.
Yeah, you know,
I mean, they're all fascinating.
eyesight, because eyesight, believe it or not, things like cataracts, especially, and even the beginning stages of glaucoma is sensitivities, and a lot of it is food. I have, honestly, Chris, I have not had a failure helping people with macular degeneration. Isn't that crazy? Where there, it doesn't, it sometimes, it oftentimes gets better. It's crazy. And it doesn't get worse, which is amazing. Wow. You know, so eyesight food is such a clear one. You know, the other thing I didn't mention is that you can be sensitive to pathogens like bacteria, even your own gut bacteria or bacteria. How many thousands of bacteria we have in our system? You can be sensitive to that. That can cause things that bother your eyes or bother your nervous system, bother the brain too. So yes, so you can actually change. So eyesight can get better, which is incredible. I know. But, you know, other things like sinus problems, allergies are easy to deal with.
Yeah, fascinating. And let me ask you a question about one of the techniques that you've got. You also use desensitization, don't you? So if you've got like for example, a sensitivity to X, whatever it be, you use desensitization as a form of therapy. To me, this is a layperson's perspective. It kind of almost seems ironic. You're like, oh, you've got a sensitivity to that. Let's either not eat it or give you an enzyme to fix it. But then the irony is you can desensitize. That's also a way to give you more of the thing that's seemingly causing harm,
and that's what I talk about. Like I evaluate. So for example, let's say you're sensitive to wool. So I look and see all the different areas that are involved, that reactivity with wool. And then I have a way, it's an acupressure type treatment that works on meridians that you can do at home too, that clear, and I write about it in my book, that clear you or desensitize you to the wool. And usually, sometimes one treatment, sometimes you may have to do a couple, and then you can wear wool and no problem.
No way.
And or cats. That's a big one. Cat allergies here. I don't really work with severe IgE allergies. I have with some results, but they're different. You know, that's a whole different ball game. But more people than not have all these other sensitivities. You know, like grass pollen and food sensitivities. So I call them sensitivities rather than allergies. Some people call them allergies, but yeah. So dogs and cats and other animals for sure. Yeah, and fabrics. People with eczema, sometimes they're allergic to cotton. they have to be desensitized to cotton. Everybody thinks, oh, cotton is fine. You know what? I've seen many people sensitive to cotton, so you have to fix that. So you have to clear it. Right. But chemicals are a big one. And honestly, because with all the sanitizer and all that, that's been a nightmare for people who already had chemical sensitivities. That's added to it. So there was much more eczema, more dermatitis, more skin rashes, etc. So I've worked a lot with people with that. So
people don't know that some of the harsh chemicals that's in that stuff, and they just assume
So just taking an enzyme, miracles happen. You never know. But it's such an important, the first thing I always do with anyone, get them on a good digestive enzyme. And literally babies can take it, as well as my dog. I give it to my dog all the time. So it's there's no person that really it doesn't agree with it. It's benign and helpful. The people always ask, well, what enzyme do I use? So I mean, you can welcome to go online. I'm going to have my website. People can actually purchase enzymes on there soon, which will good. In the meantime, you can call my office or find a good full spectrum digestive enzyme. And I talk about that on my website, what to look for. They usually work. Some people really need to focus on like just fat digestion or protein. most people do pretty good with a full spectrum digestive enzyme that digests everything, and you take it like 10 minutes before you eat or right before you eat, not after, because that doesn't work. It's not a pill. It's a digestive support. So you take it before you eat.
Yeah, and actually just, let me laser in on that for a second. So when we talk about enzyme therapy, is it always or primarily about taking it before you eat because it's about digestive matters? Is that usually the case, or could there also be enzyme therapies that are not about eating? It's just broader things.
Great question. Yes. So there's digestive enzymes you take before you eat. There is one enzyme that we have, it's called gastric ease. That's for people that have reflux, GERD, that has to be taken with food and sometimes afterwards too. But there's a whole line of other products that have enzymes in it. So for example, I have, one of the enzymes is a soft tissue enzyme that's great for people after they exercise, they get a little achy or stiff, that has some turmeric in it and bromelain. So these are what we call them systemic based enzymes. So there's one for skin, there's one for the immune system, there's one for discs and bones, there's one for, that has some calcium support, but they're all based in enzymes. So because when you put enzymes, they optimize the other things that are in it because it works quicker and faster and more efficient. So that's a really good question. Yeah. So there's all kinds of other ones that I use as well, like kidneys for kidneys, or and a big one was the immune for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. I mean, I'm blown away. I mean, look, all I can say is that there clearly need to be more people like you. I'm sure you've got to this stage in your career now where it's not possible to replicate the number of sessions that you can physically do, right? So like if I was living in California, I'd be knocking on your door right now and saying,
oh, yeah.
What have I got wrong with me? Figure me out. Just tell me. So
well, I used to train, and I stopped for a little while, and now I'm training again. So I want people that really, they can dedicate this to their practice or just use it as an adjunct in their practice. Please go on my website and we can do it via Zoom. They don't have to come here. We have the webinars all set up. So I'm really excited about getting some ECM practitioners out there.
Will you be certifying that as part of like if you do this training, you're ECM certified?
Yes, absolutely. And they'll learn everything. And then they'll have me coaching them too for a year. So I'll be with them as much as they need to really get them so they feel, they'll be so excited about it. And I streamlined it so it's really, they'll learn it, they'll love it. Once you experience it, it's like, you can't think of doing other work. It makes so much sense, It
does. It's fascinating. And, one of the things I did about 8 years ago was through Gallup, from the psychometric side of things. I did the Gallup Clifton Strengths methodology and became a strengths coach. These programs are very powerful to give you a methodology, etc. That's fantastic. Well, I mean, look, what can I say? I mean, Dr. Ellen Cutler, you've blown my mind. You've opened up my heart. I can see so much.
Oh yeah, it was great.
Thank you.
This was one of the best interviews. You're wonderful. I completely support you. Love to come back anytime. So anytime you want me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure we can probably, narrow down into very specific subjects and talk about how things are going. So and what we'll do for the benefit of the audience is when we've got Dr. Cutler's website, there's a YouTube channel, and there's going to be these updates and these training programs, as we've just said, coming up. So, please do check them out. And for me, as the host here today, my name's Chris Hall, and Dr. Ellen Cutler. It's been an absolute bloody pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. Please subscribe, and we look forward to having you back as a guest soon.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.